Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector, and today we're in October. We're coming up on Halloween, and I thought, as I see other bloggers and people on Instagram just talking about the sugar and talking about the substitutions, I thought it would be a sensible thing to do to talk about balance and just share today a little bit about what we do for Halloween, what we've done over the years, and how we seek a little balance, right? What are the negative impacts of the sugar? How much sugar should the kids have? Should we even be talking about sugar? Is that even, should that even be part of the conversation? Okay, so I don't know. We'll just jump right in. I think there can be a lot of guilt around Halloween. If you're a family who tries to eat pretty clean, tries to eat real food, Halloween comes up and it's just this like looming event, right? Where everyone and their brother is going to be giving your kids more sugar than ever. And I feel like there's some extremes, right? Like, do we just enter in and let it happen as it will happen? Or do we put, a ton of restrictions and say no sugar, one piece? I know, for example, I have a good friend and they have, I think it's two rules: no trans fats and no artificial colors. I'm like, well, artificial colors pretty much gets rid of most of the candy, right? You're pretty much left with chocolates. And then no trans fats knocks out some more of those chocolates, especially the peanut buttery ones. So if you look at like the kids' whole stash from trick or treating, there's really very few that they can eat, even though it sounds like there's only two rules. And I look at that and I go, well, should I feel guilty about that? That I totally let my kids consume artificial colors? I don't really know. I really don't know. And well, here's the thing. The answer is no, I should not feel guilt, right? Because guilt is not going to serve anyone. That's just going to weigh us down. And so if you're looking at other people's rules and you start to feel guilty, that's where you need to catch that thought and say, okay, I need to own whatever I am doing. If I feel inspired by this person, if I think that rule, if that extreme would work in our house, then I should do it. I should implement it. However, if I don't feel called to implement that, then I shouldn't feel guilty, right? Because of what other people are doing. And if you leave with nothing else today, it should be that. Like, let's not give ourselves that guilt that we really don't need, that won't serve us. I think that balance is such a fine line, right? We know, and research shows and experience proves that when we restrict a food, when we restrict anything, but especially food, the kids tend to push back at some point, right? They may not be pushing back as 5-year-olds, although they may, sneaking candy or whatever. But eventually, those kids are going to have driver's licenses and they're going to have incomes. They're going to have their own money that they can go spend. And at some point, there's probably going to be an awakening, where if you restrict, they expand and like go overboard. And so for me, one potential opportunity for Halloween is to, allow a little more sugar than maybe you normally would, or even just allow the kids to go hog wild, not as a 2-year-old. I mean, we're talking like middle, upper elementary here, middle school, whatever. But what I always say to my kids, when we sort of like take the restrictions off, maybe we're at a party and I just say, you're responsible for your own dessert choices today. There's no rules. You can eat whatever you want. But whatever you do, kids, this is what I tell them. Whatever you do, I want you to pay attention to how you feel, right? This is an opportunity to be a human experiment and to realize that what we put in definitely impacts how we feel. It could be that day, it could be the next day, right? And so I ask them to pay attention to how they're thinking, how clear they're thinking, how they're feeling, if they're feeling emotionally balanced or unbalanced, if their bodies feel, heavy or icky in any way, or if their poop changes. Oh yes, it's lovely being a Kimball child. We talk about poop in our house. Mortifies half of them. The other half don't care. We have 3 boys. Anyway, and so it's such a good opportunity for conversation, right? I'm not going to go buy a bunch of suckers or a bunch of junk food and like bring that into my house to create an arena for this opportunity to be mindful and to pay attention. But if it's going to come at me, at the very least, right? At the very least, get some learning out of it. I know my oldest, and I don't think he minds. He doesn't mind me telling this story. When he was in 5th grade, so he's 11th grade now. When Paul was in 5th grade, he overdid it. He won a limbo contest at the school party, and he got a lollipop, a sucker that was clear, like literally as big as his face, and he ate quite a lot of it, along with a lot of other, foods and junk food that were there. And then the trick or treating was that night, and he woke up the next day at 5 in the morning throwing up, and I didn't say a thing. I thought I just want to see where his mind goes, right? And he made the connection. He thought, yeah, maybe I overdid it, right? And he does, always remember that. Now, of course, he eats like a teenager. He probably does eat too much sugar. So we're still a work in progress here at the Kimball house. So what are some other ways that you can strike a balance, right? What we do is I usually let my kids have some candy while we're trick or treating, and for them it's a treat because usually, and if you've followed me for any amount of time, you know that our dessert philosophy and regulations are always shifting every couple of years. I learn something new, and so for me, what's most important for my kids, and I think this is what's most important for all kids in all situations, is that they are learning to make decisions for themselves, right? Whether this is crossing the road, eating sugar, or figuring out how to treat people in the world, right? If we are always telling them what to do, and if we are thinking for them, they'll never learn it for themselves, right? So that is literally in every situation, our job as a parent is to teach our child to take ownership of that situation and to use, their own brain to make their own decisions. Obviously, more and more as they get older, we have more control when they're younger. And so it's this idea of how much control and choice do we give them. But generally, when we're trick or treating, and this is after my kids are in elementary school, I'll say, what do you think? How many pieces at the beginning, right, before their pillowcases are heavy laden with the sweets and the sugar? I'll ask them, how many pieces do you think will be a good idea for you tonight as a 6-year-old boy or as a 9-year-old girl or whatever? I always like to throw in their age there. And we talk about it. Maybe sometimes they usually make pretty good choices. I've never had a kid say 20, for example. Usually they'll say, well, maybe 3 or 4. I'll say, okay, cool. You decide, make good decisions and for what you want to try, get a nice variety, and I make it fun. I try not to, you know, speak what I'm really thinking is that all this is all junk and it's all going to hurt you. But it's, we just we have to not label everything all the time, because if we do that again, it's going to create that desire in our kids for it. So I ask them, how many pieces do you think you should have? I'm going to throw out a caveat for parents of young children. Your kid's 1, they're 2, maybe they're 3. My philosophy with my little ones is don't let them know anything that they don't need to know, which means if my kid is 2, hopefully they've never had candy yet. And this was true for like my youngest, Gabe. He's just about to turn 7. He did not have candy until he was 3. He didn't know candy existed because that was my modus operandi. That was what I wanted. Because if he doesn't know what he's missing, it's not painful, right? It's not even a restriction because the whole category, the whole topic doesn't even exist, right? So I don't take my young children trick-or-treating. I don't let them know that the candy exists until I have to. Usually that's about 3. And then at that point, it's like, oh, instead of 1 today, you can have 2, right? And you make it sound like it's big and fun, but it's still pretty restrictive because they're tiny, right? And the sugar is going to have more of an impact on their tiny bodies, and we want them to sleep that night. So I would say try to just keep those little ones at home as long as you can. Okay. So let's talk about sugar. My friend Dr. Medea Saeed and has done some interviews, and she and many other doctors say, that consuming sugar knocks down your immune system for like, I think it's 5 hours afterward. And so you go, okay, provided that that's fact, are we ready for this? Are we willing to knock down our kids' immune systems? Do a lot of kids get sick with little bugs and viruses that are going around and colds and stuff the week after Halloween? Yeah, they do. And so that's another opportunity to connect what we eat with how we feel, what we consume with what happens to us. But we also got to say, well, are we willing to get a cold? Sure. Yeah, that's going to build our kids' immune system ultimately. And my kids know that once they get sick, they don't get sugar. because we know that sugar's not going to help them fight those bad bacteria or bad viruses, right? And so that's another way in our family that we connect that the sugar is going to impact your immune system and the way you feel. So are you ready for that? if it's a known risk, right? We still get into cars, we put our seatbelts on, but we still drive cars. That's a known risk. Are we going to let our kids have some sugar? Yeah, I am. It's a known risk. I'm willing to put up with it and hope that it's not, the biggest, baddest cold that we've ever had as a family, right? So what we do again is fairly unlimited, fairly unrestricted on Halloween night. The day after Halloween, usually instead of one dessert a day, we'll let them have two. And then the kids all keep their candy on trays, which they're allowed to keep out, like on top of our fridge or somewhere out of the way for a month. After a month, I say the trays expire. Now, same rules as we have all year round. All of your candy has to fit in one Costco nut container, right? With the screw-on lids. Anything that doesn't fit has to be given away or thrown away. And so this teaches them to budget, teaches them to make their own choices, right? One a day. And it also teaches them that they have to make things work and make things fit. And sometimes that means, making the hard decisions to get rid of stuff. Here's what I don't do. Here's what I don't do. And I see a lot of other, I see right now, like Food Babe is posting constantly on Instagram all of these ingredients. What are the ingredients in the Halloween candy you're buying? And how are they different from the UK, where the UK has more bans on some of the additives and especially the artificial colors. And I agree, like we should not have the artificial colors here, but what I do on Halloween probably is not going to impact that. So I don't dig into the ingredients of what my kids are eating. And I don't spend a ton of extra money to buy healthy candy. Okay? Because number one, the kids who are trick-or-treating at our house, they're not gonna appreciate that. And and if my kids have a little bit of our like healthier candy with no food coloring on their huge tray of all the junk, they're also not going to appreciate that, right? Um, and so if I think about, when we do buy candy, which is incredibly rare because I've learned my lesson. I used to buy healthier candy for different holidays, right? Maybe Christmas or maybe Easter. And what happens? It goes in their Costco nut container, and the good dark chocolate takes on all the weird flavors from all the Laffy Taffy, and then a year later they're throwing it away at Halloween. So, lesson learned. What do we do at Halloween? We give out bouncy balls. we give out trinkets, non-edibles, and I buy huge bags of them once and just keep them for years, and I don't have to go Halloween candy shopping. So that's what I do. That's what I do. And also, interestingly enough, my kids will look at their stash when they get home and they'll be like, they're like doing the candy math and thinking, I know I can only eat about 30 pieces before I have to fit it all inside my personal candy tub. And they'll put some in our basket when they get home to give away right away to other trick-or-treaters. So if you come to my house, if there's candy in the basket, it's probably stuff that my kids just got that night that they're like paring down already preemptively, which is kind of funny. But isn't that's higher level thinking, right? That's planning ahead. And that's what I talk about when there's, we can see Halloween coming as, a bane to our existence and this awful scary thing that's going to make our kids sick and whatever. Or we can see it as opportunities for growth and learning, which is what all of parenting is. And so again, for me, I'm not going to buy anything I don't want my kids to eat, which means I'm not going to buy candy. I just don't bother. It's not where I want to invest my money. If we're going to make something fun, if we're going to bake something for Halloween, well, for us, it's whole grains, it's pumpkin-based stuff. I've got a post on kitchen stewardship. You can just search kitchen stewardship Halloween party ideas, where I kind of walk through when I plan a Halloween party for my kids, for like kids classes. I never ask for candy. I usually make all the food or ask parents to bring in certain things like baby carrots with a sunflower seed stuck in the end as witch's fingers. And then I make guacamole to dip it in and it's monster slime. So we make healthy foods into fun foods just by being creative. And I remember one time this little kindergartner walked up to me and said, Mrs. Kimball, where's the candy? P.S. I've run parties like this like 4 or 5 times. Never had anyone but this one little boy ask, where's the candy? And I just shot right away. I said, oh, honey, I think that's what happens tonight. We have all sorts of other options here. And he walked away happy, right? We don't have to make it a big deal. We don't have to make it a battle. And so what do we do? What do we do with all the candy? Should we feel guilty throwing it away? Nah. I mean, it's not food anyway, right? So we shouldn't feel guilty throwing it away if our kids got it trick-or-treating. But there are some other fun ideas, right? Like my friend who doesn't let our kids have artificial colors or trans fats. They often use some of those candies and they chop them up and put them in chocolate chip cookies instead of the chocolate chips. And I see Sophie here in the comments saves some of that Halloween candy to decorate gingerbread houses at Christmas, which I'm guessing don't get eaten, right? That's a great repurpose. That's a great reuse. Or you could challenge your kids to like glue Skittles together and who can stack them the highest. Like there's lots of ways to sort of interact with the candy without it necessarily having to go into your body, and again to sort of minimize and moderate, right? We say everything in moderation. Well, kind of, as long as it's actually moderation, right? But for me, one a day is moderation. And then this is fun. Another comment from Abby. She said, we don't actually hand out candy. We go to our cousin's neighborhood with the 4-year-old, so we're staying busy, right? We're connecting with family. It's very freeing to never have to feel like they're ever going to do that again. And then yeah, they're vegan, so they go through and give away or throw away what's not vegan friendly. So that's great. And that's the thing is like, Abby, you're owning that. Like these are our values as a family. I am not going to allow the rest of the culture to put guilt or shame on me. I'm not going to allow them to dictate what I do. And then these are our family values. We're vegan. We're not going to eat anything that doesn't fit with that. If all year round you tell your kids no artificial colors, you should keep that value on Halloween for sure. Or say, hey, maybe today you can experiment, but listen to your body, right? Watch what it does. Sometimes, unfortunately, the kids listen to their bodies and they don't hear anything. And they don't learn anything, but that's okay. They're at least building that neural pathway that we should, right? That we should connect what we eat with how we feel, right? And so hold on, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. Oh, and then, okay, so the final thing I wanted to say is, again, how can we sort of mitigate? Because we know that if our kids are eating a bunch of sugar, their blood sugar is going to go up and then it's going to crash, and it's not great blood sugar regulation for that day, but it's only one day in the whole scheme of things. And so for me, I try to mitigate by front loading. I want to get those kids a really good dinner. And I know sometimes we're rushing, and so we serve like a not great dinner on Halloween. For me, it's going to be a good dinner. We sort of have a tradition of having chili on that night. And so at least for me, that's filling. There's a good bit of fat and protein. I'm going to try hard to get those kids to have their raw vegetables that night and dip them in some ranch and, just to have that fat and protein to mitigate the negative effects of the blood sugar spike that they're about to enter. Maybe it would be better to do, just sort of a meat and vegetables and almost no carbs. But for now, we do chili. But that's how we can think about things, right? How can we, if they're going to have some sugar, then we're going to serve them some fat and protein, and we're not going to make a big deal about it. We're not going to micromanage. We're not going to, nutrient manage. And then of course we've got the families who say, but Katie, I have a picky eater. My kid's not eating dinner well. Should I further restrict the candy for that child? And that's where there's again a lot of balance and a lot of things that we have to learn. But whether you have a picky eater or a typical eater, is there really a typical eater kid? Probably not. But no matter what kind of eater you have, it's really, really important, parents. I really encourage you not to use treats as a reward, right? We don't want to say, oh, you have to eat a good dinner on Halloween so you can eat lots of candy. That's not how it works. That makes the dinner become the drudgery that they have to get through, and the pain and suffering. Because what's the opposite of a reward, right? It's a punishment. So if we put dessert or sweets or treats or Halloween candy as a reward, now dinner is the punishment. We want to avoid that for all of our kids, probably especially picky eaters, because they might be overthinking things about food too much. And so that's really, really important. Don't ask the kids to eat the veggies because of the treats, right? Not making a big deal out of it. We're entering into a phase twice a year. We run a No More Picky Eating Challenge. And so this year, 2021, depending when you're listening to this, that starts tomorrow. Definitely get signed up for that. And we're going to work with parents in the No More Picky Eating Challenge. We're going to work on building the right habits and creating an environment that can support kids in making good food choices and in forming a good relationship with their food. Because as it turns out, Picky eating is far less about food and far more about relationships and about what's going on inside the child. So we're digging into all of that starting tomorrow. I would love to see people join me if you haven't yet. And I think I'm throwing that in the comments. And then I love this from Sophie to kind of help wrap up. She says she tries to educate her kids and like, what does a treat mean? Is it a treat if you do it daily? Is it a treat if you have it at every meal? No, then it's not really a treat anymore, right? A treat should be special. And I just love that little bit of vocabulary. So to wrap up, when we're talking about a balanced, healthy Halloween, I want to encourage you to think of healthy as not only body, but also mental health and also future casting, also building our kids' brains, their neural pathways, and their habits to become healthy, independent adults, regardless of what happens on that one day, right? So can we take a balanced approach to Halloween? Sure. Here are my top 3 tips. Don't buy it if you don't want your kids to eat it. Let the day be fun, but also an opportunity for mindfulness and connecting our minds and our bodies and the way we feel with what we eat. Perhaps an opportunity to feel what excess does, or to learn moderation and to work on our own self-discipline, right? And then number 3, definitely fill them up before going out, but never, never, never use treats as a reward. So happy October. Happy fall. If you celebrate Halloween, may you have a happy, healthy, balanced Halloween. I'm Katie Kimball for the Healthy Parenting Connector from Kids Cook Real Food, and I hope to see you all in the No More Picky Eating Challenge whenever you're listening to this. We always run it twice a year. Take care, everyone.